Call to order. Welcome to Wednesday, November 2nd, Library Commission meeting. We usually start with a review of the guidelines, meeting guidelines, but it looks like we do not have any additional members of the public joining us. So we're going to skip over that. And then I'm going to ask if we can open up the chat so that commissioners can log their time. Kate will be very happy to hear that we do this now. And we'll move on to item number 3, which is an approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any changes or anything that they would like to add to the agenda? Okay. All right. So should we move to approve the agenda? Okay. Okay, Scott, you're gonna do that. Do we have a second? All those in favor? Stephen, in favor? Okay, agenda approved. And then we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes from the October 5th meeting. I believe everybody was there, so we can all vote. Does anybody have any changes or anything that they'd like to see amended in the minutes?
Can I just say, I read a lot of minutes, like in my life. Celia, you are fantastic at writing meeting minutes. Can I just point that out to you? You do a fantastic job. I read that and I'm like, nobody like summarizes it quite like this. So my hat's off to you.
Thank you
I
so
move
much.
that we accept those minutes.
Do we have Stephen to second? All those in favor? Okay. Approved. Okay, so we have 2 presentations again tonight, which is our favorite thing as a commission. I'll speak as a whole, as we love getting the staff presentations and finding out what's going on at the library. And this first one is the hotspot program, one which I think is amazing, and I can't wait to hear more about this presentation. So thank you for being here, Amy. We look forward to hearing more about the hotspots.
Awesome. Thank you so much for allowing me to come to this meeting tonight and present to you what the hotspot program was, what we learned, and everything in between. So let me share my screen here. Celia, you may have to help me. I'm not a regular Zoom user here.
Just made you co-host. Do you have a share screen button on the bottom of your menu bar? On the bottom menu bar?
Nope. I've got apps, live transcript, stop recording, raise hand. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, everybody see a big purple box? Fantastic. Okay, good evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Amy Shum. I'm the East Services Manager here at the library. And again, thank you for allowing me time to present to you some information about this Digital Divide project that has spanned the last 2 years. I hope you learned something from these slides, as I did managing the project. This presentation is going to be divided into 2 phases in which the library in the city responded to the needs of our community. Phase 1 started in March of 2020, and as you will see later in this presentation, Phase 2 started in September of 2020. On March 13th, 2020, the pandemic closed down the world, and suddenly families were faced with the challenge of how to keep kids in school without leaving their home. Within the state of Colorado, schools saw a 78% classes moving to distance learning using online resources, 15% of classes moved to distance learning using paper materials, and 32% of classes were just canceled in general. In a very short amount of time, we saw the socioeconomic disparities among our community. An analysis from the Colorado Future Center at Colorado State University found that 54,000 school-age children in Colorado did not have internet access in May of 2020. Children without internet access were disproportionately Hispanic and Latinx in elementary grades and had parents who were essential workers. Disparity appeared particularly severe on the Front Range, where Hispanic children made up more than 70% of the students without internet access, but accounted for just over 30% of the student population. In Boulder County, BVSD had over 1,000 students without internet access, and school administrators were scrambling to connect students to virtual learning. Their staff started connecting families to the internet through Livewire or Comcast. And for families who could not take advantage of those resources, we gave them hotspots. With the help of the Library Foundation, the library went into action. By March 31st, just 12 business days after we closed, the library had purchased 100 hotspots that went directly to BVSD students. By April 13th, we had purchased an additional 175 hotspots to distribute. We worked with the city's community connectors to distribute 60 of those hotspots in mostly Hispanic and Latinx neighborhoods. And the remaining 115 hotspots were distributed by staff from the North Boulder Rec Center and the Noble Corner Library. Twitter provided technical support in English and in Spanish for all 275 hotspots. So I want to share a little bit about the outcome of distributing these hotspots. School-age children were able to continue learning by attending class virtually. I have a story that really sticks with me that happened from this distribution picture that you see here. It was this very event. We had these two little girls come to the table and they wanted to know what we were doing. And when we explained to them that we were handing out hotspots, their eyes got really big and they ran home and they got an adult and they brought that adult back. And we explained that we were from the library. We had these hotspots. We knew there were families without internet connection and we wanted to give them a hotspot if they needed one. No strings attached. We would pay for the data. All they had to do was use it for their virtual learning, for any kind of virtual work that the parents were doing. So what I found out was this family did not have internet access, and these girls were having to do all of their virtual learning in the hallway of their apartment complex because they were using their neighbor's internet. And so by giving them a hotspot, they were able to actually continue their virtual learning from the comfort of their own home. Adults were able to continue working virtually, and this includes many library staff. We had many library staff that had to work virtually but did not have internet connection, so we were able to provide them with a hotspot. And older adults were able to stay connected virtually with family and friends. They attended virtual doctor's appointments, they did online grocery shopping, and like all of us, they watched a lot of Netflix to pass the time. So now we're going to move into phase 2. During this pandemic, we really didn't know what the next day would look like. We thought we had helped everyone who needed access to the internet, but we were wrong. Phase 2 started in September of 2020. The city received a CARES grant and they allocated $100,000 for our Bridging the Digital Divide project. The library worked closely with our partners at Children, Youth and Families, Senior Services, and the Boulder County Area Agency on Aging to specifically reach out to Hispanic and Latinx families with school-age children and older adults. Sister Carmen and Older Adult Services provided technical support for those older adults who needed just a little bit more assistance setting up those devices. Distribution started at the library in October of 2020, and it concluded in December of 2020. The library saw long lines and devices were gone within hours. Family Services met with specific families in need at the lower income schools to provide devices. And Older Adult Services also provided a distribution event, and they delivered devices to homebound adults. Overall, we distributed 280 Chromebooks, 78 iPads, and 174 hotspots. So some more outcome for phase 2. In September of 2021, I worked with a volunteer from Catch a Fire to survey the older adults who participated in the program. And what I found was the program had had major impact on their quality of life, and it enabled them to function more efficiently and stay safe during COVID. And these are just some of the things that these older adults did with the Chromebooks and hotspots that they had. There was one patron in particular, she was one of my favorite patrons. She probably called me weekly because she had trouble with her Chromebook. And so I kind of became her personal tech advisor. And she was just so happy to be able to order her groceries online and have those groceries delivered to her house. It was just invaluable to her. She didn't have internet access or a computer before this program. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at this program by the numbers. Unfortunately, during phase one, supply and demand tripled the cost of the hotspots, costing the Library Foundation $81,000, which did include the monthly data on those hotspots for 2020. We discovered that many of the recipients did not have internet in their homes, but relied on the library or other locations. Once everything closed down and people were without internet, they would have to come sit in our parking lots to access the internet that we provided. Most of our recipients were from North Boulder, which we suspect was because our first distribution event happened in North Boulder. When the older adults were surveyed, they did live in all areas of the city. For phase two, the supply chain for these devices had improved greatly. As you can see from this slide, we were back to paying only on the data for the hotspots, which allowed us to diversify what we could purchase for our community. What was interesting was that we saw heavy use of those hotspots from the time we distributed them in the fall of 2020 until June of 2021. The use declined sharply in July of 2021. This was likely because school was out and COVID numbers were lower, which meant older adults felt safer going out. In addition to the CARES money we received, the library was also able to secure additional grant funding to keep paying the data on these hotspots. And we're actually sunsetting this program at the end of 2022. When we surveyed older adults in last December of 21, 40% of those older adults who received a hotspot still needed that device into 2022, which is why we decided to keep paying for it through 2022. Okay, so what did we learn from all of this? We knew the digital divide existed, but we really didn't understand the complexities of it. Through this process, we learned the importance of a level playing field for everyone in our community, despite their socioeconomic status or age. Now our focus has turned to checking out these devices for other people in need. In 2020, we had 18 hotspots to check out. Now we have 52, and there are 30 people on the hold list for those 52 hotspots. We had 6 Chromebooks in 2020. Now we have 26. Based off hotspot use, participants were using the hotspot for school and online meetings and not just for entertainment. Many of these folks had slower internet or older devices that couldn't connect to online meeting or learning platforms, so they relied on the library for those devices. From an administrative perspective, we never anticipated the supply chain issues and having to pay 3 times more for the devices that were free in 2019. A colleague and I had to drive to 7 different stores in the Denver Boulder area just to scrape up 30 iPads. And the cool thing is we were able to reach community members not familiar with library services thanks to our partners at Housing and Human Services and the Community Connectors. It was really an all hands on deck approach, and the success of this project could not have been possible without library staff. Staff from every work group pitched in at every point. I was delivering hotspots to staffers to their homes so they could process them for distribution. Staff were working in our buildings to help manage the crazy lines that we had from the community members picking up these hotspots. And a lot of staff signed up for those distribution events up in the North Boulder area. Throughout all of the bad that was the pandemic, this was the good. Overall, this program has helped close to 600 families over the course of 2 years, and we hope to continue to respond as needed in the future. Those hotspots that we're checking out, they've averaged 5 checkouts per year to date, and they have helped connect victims of the Marshall Fire. They've helped Afghan refugee families moving into the city. They've helped countless people experiencing homelessness and many, many more. Thanks so much. You have any questions?
Amy, thank you so much for that presentation. I think that this program is just, there are no words for how amazing this program is and how well you guys pulled it together. It's such a success story. I remember during the pandemic reading so many stories about people across the country that were sitting in cars with their kids accessing internet from buildings and stuff. And it was just heartwarming to know that at least in Boulder, this program had been put together to help people stay at home and comfortable where they're learning and connecting people. It's just, I mean, it's just an amazing story. I have a question, and maybe this is me that wasn't keeping up with that presentation, but when you say you're sunsetting the program at the end of this year, can you still come and check out a hotspot or a device? Can you just explain the difference between what will be available after the end of this calendar year and what won't be?
Yeah. So we're sunsetting paying the data on those hotspots that were distributed to the community.
Okay.
So the 40% of the older adults that still have a hotspot, and we have a handful of other families that have hotspots, we're sunsetting paying the data on those hotspots. We will continue to check out hotspots and Chromebooks, and it's clear that they're needed. I mean, 52 hotspots and there's 30 holds. We will be continuing to add hotspots as we can and pay for the data for those hotspots. We have seen a high loss rate, particularly on those Chromebooks, but we really feel like the benefit outweighs the loss at this point. Obviously, if I can continue to find grant money to pay for this program, that makes it even that much more powerful for our community. So.
Yeah, I can imagine that there's some things that we've just moved on as a society. So pulling that back from somebody could be really difficult. There's such an assumption that the changes we made during the pandemic is something that can go forward without thinking about the fact that some people don't have that availability. I wonder whether it's something that we keep an eye on so that depending what the outcome of the library district and the role the foundation will move in, is that's something that we can continue to look at offering people and grant money and things like that. I think it's definitely something to continue to consider for the future.
Absolutely. And we've been in touch with these folks throughout this entire process and have checked in with them to see how things are going. And many of them can now get internet access on their own. I think with the pandemic, it opened the eyes for companies like Comcast to find lower payment options, lower tiers that they could offer lower income families. There's subsidies and things like that just weren't available, during the pandemic that they can take advantage of. So yeah, I anticipate I'm hoping most of the people will be able to continue internet access in another way, unless of course the library decides to continue supporting this.
Yeah. And one last question, you mentioned some of the people you were connecting with didn't have any contact with the library before this. Have you found that this program has opened the doors to other programs at the library for the people that weren't familiar with library services?
I think so. I personally have not followed up with those families, but I think we are seeing more families coming to programs. It was particularly the lower income Hispanic Latinx community that did not use the library, and they came to us because of the community connectors and because of the people that we have in those lower income schools, the partners that we have. So I think we'll see the benefit. It's just not going to be like it will be over a long period of time, I think, building that trust.
Thank you.
Yeah, Scott.
Amy, I have a more direct question. Given that you're saying the programming is sunsetting and you had some high losses on the Chromebooks, have you or your colleagues, have any of you gone directly to Google and said, here's what's happening? Can you set up a program to give us X number of Chromebooks each year? I mean, it's not like Google's doesn't have any money, and it's not like it's not like they don't have it's not like they don't have a need to not generate goodwill in the community.
That's a great question, Scott. David and I went to Google 6 years ago when we were building the makerspace, asking for money, and they kind of said thanks, but no thanks. I have not spoken to them since. David, I don't know if you have spoken to Google.
No, I did. I proposed this program to them, Scott, and they were interested. I don't want to say they were not. They flew somebody out to speak with me from, I don't know where it is, Cupertino or someplace like that. And then another guy from Texas came up to talk. In the end, they opted not to. They said they really weren't in the business of, they wanted us to circulate an education platform that Alphabet was rolling out. And I told them maybe if it was consistent with what the schools were doing, but if it wasn't consistent with what the schools were doing, I wasn't interested. And yeah, we made it down the road, but we didn't get to the final, we didn't get to funding. So it's something we would go back to them on. I mean, Google has funded a similar program for school age kids in New York City. They supply all school-age kids who need a Chromebook and a hotspot for entire school year. So yeah, that is a model program, and I just don't know that they see the need. I don't know that we didn't make it, right? We didn't get it we didn't get the funding, but I'm not willing to give up because I think they are interested in precisely what you said, community goodwill. They want some community goodwill.
Well, and David, the follow up on that too is it's not like we don't have any tech entrepreneurs or don't have any technology companies in Boulder. There has to be somebody, whether it's either through Techstars or somebody along the line of a Brad Feld or whomever is out there. And I'm just picking out some random names, but there've got to be some people out there who have an interest in participating in this fashion. So it's just a matter of finding the right people and the right companies and saying, do you want to participate?
I think what I found interesting is if you look at census data and you look at households that have internet, broadband, and a computer, the percentages are in the low to mid 90s. But what we learned was, yeah, they may have internet and they may have a device, but neither could handle the bandwidth that was needed for online learning and for Zoom meetings and things. So.
Well, thank you, Amy. I really appreciate you presenting this and all of your hard work to do this, and to your team who was able to pull this together so quickly and make such an impact to the community. It's amazing work.
Thank you. You have my contact information. If any other questions pop up, I'm happy to get back to you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to leave. Good luck, Kate. Nice to see everybody. Have a nice evening.
Bye, Amy. Okay, so then moving along, we have got a presentation on volunteer services from Kate. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, good to be here. So I realized that I hadn't been to the Library Commission to talk about volunteer services since the summer of 2019. So there's a bit to share. So I'm going to give a little bit of overview of what happened through the COVID times and kind of where we're at today. So let me share my screen here. Okay, that work? Can you see it okay? Okay, great. So I'm going to talk about volunteerism since 2020, but also as you heard at one of the recent meetings that I'm in a new role, which is managing the community literacy and outreach. So I'll give a little update on that at the end too. Oh, wrong screen. Hold on one sec here. There. So 2020. You know, what was really phenomenal is that the volunteers continued where at all possible, they just kept pitching in. They moved to Zoom, they used Google Meetings, they Teams, whatever they could to make it happen. And so, you know, a lot of our key programs just moved online, and volunteers, you know, sometimes they didn't even know the technology, but were willing to learn and willing to make it happen. And then programs like Conversations in English, which had pretty much, I think, solely been in person, moved to all online really rapidly and was able to make that accessible to a large group of people. Then our program, like our home delivery program, you know, quickly so that we could involve, as soon as we started opening again, we had staff picking up the new patrons that needed to be part of our home delivery program. So we still had volunteers participating, and we were able to take many more people in and really quickly with staff pitching in. And the other thing in 2020 was the library shared its resources. We work for the city, but I was coordinating what's called our volunteer cooperative. So it's volunteer coordinators across the city, and really helping think about how we can engage the community, how do we make it easy, what are the protocols. We quickly stood up the COVID Recovery Center for the city through the database, the whole application process, all the shifts. So we really played a role overall in the city in volunteerism too. The other thing is I want to give, credit to our staff for being super creative. They, wanted to make sure, how do we serve the community? How can we make sure that everything possible we can provide to our community? And the volunteers were just as responsive. And so like the teen chats moved online, and the teen volunteers provided or created a murder mystery program online. They were part of creating the first ever Teen Summit online. We had a new role called the Book Drop Volunteers, and they brought all the books and materials in that people were returning to the library. And as you can imagine, after we were closed a long time, it was pretty crazy. But they would put those in a room according to date. They would make sure they were quarantined, and they got all the training online and took care of that to make sure we could keep up with everything. They came up with, like, the staff came up with, how do we give out the Summer of Discovery prizes? And so they had a tent outside, and volunteers, rose their hand, yes, we'll help. And so they would wear their mask and sit outside. You'll see the picture there. And they were part of giving out those hotspots and computers too. So they were some of the people, we had some of our Spanish speaking volunteers help with that. They created literacy kits at home, craft kits. And they just kept going. And they were, for those who were able to volunteer, they were really excited to step up and participate. As we transitioned to 2021, we ended some roles like the Book Drop. We started others. We started a shelf adopter program so people could come in and adopt a section of the library and keep those tidy, look for grubby books, things like that. We had a lot of programs starting to go online. And at this point, we just have more and more coming online. We had volunteers coming back in person with their masks, with their sanitizer. So we had the Summer of Discovery volunteers who signed up 4,000 people that summer to participate in our Summer of Discovery program. And the home delivery, we had tons of ebbs and flows as people got vaccinated and felt more comfortable. They would drop out, new people would hear about it and come in. So we had probably over 100 patrons and volunteers coming and going, depending on the timing of that. And then another thing I just wanted to highlight is we opened our used bookstore, Paper and Spine used books. That had been remodeled right before COVID, and we were probably within weeks of opening it, and we were shut down. And so we had never been in that space that was remodeled. We had a naming contest. We did branding for the bookstore. We had to create a whole new system and basically almost train an entire new set of volunteers because of COVID. People moved, people had other things happening. So we had that happen too. As we move back into 2022, a lot of our key programs are back in person as much as possible, or still continuing in a hybrid way. They found new ways that also worked for a variety of people. So doing more of it at home, or some of our conversations in English are still online, things like that. A couple of things I just wanted to highlight. We had a 60% increase in teen volunteers this past summer. That's from 2019. So that was really significant. Teens are looking for opportunities, or their parents are, or both. And some of the main reasons that teens asked to volunteer was, it came up over and over again when we asked them why, was to connect with other teens and make friends. It's been a hard time for teens, and this was an opportunity. Not that all of them made friends, but we did see teens making friends and sharing things and getting to know some new people. And so that was great. We had increases in adults too. At this point, we're up to, just tons of programs online. Or in person, every weekend now, we basically have a volunteer opportunity for people to participate. And with our Jaipur Festival, we had that online. We were back up to 130 volunteers that participated in that festival. That's a lot of people. So people are willing to pitch in and come out. And what was great is again, at the Jaipur Festival, we saw a real diversity of ages, backgrounds, cultures come and really make that possible. And then another thing I want to highlight, which is really driven by volunteers, is our Reading Buddies program. So we were able to launch that this year too with 2 sessions, 38 kids, one at Uni Hill and one at the main library. So there's 19 kids in each of the sessions. Just a snapshot in numbers. We keep increasing, and this year compared to last year, we already have 35% more volunteers. This is only since probably the beginning of October, so we're going to have more numbers. We're not by any means up to what we were before COVID, but it's significantly increasing. And one of the things to note during 2020 in particular, those volunteers who felt comfortable volunteering, they often volunteered multiple times, and each of those individuals on average were giving 25% more of their time than individuals in the past. So they were just giving. If we'd ask again, okay, we need kits. Okay, I can help too. And so it's really fun to see their commitment and involvement in that. And you'll have a copy of the presentation. So if you want to see more on the numbers, you can. One of the things we did during, I guess it's COVID, we're still COVID in a way, is we did our first ever all volunteer survey to really do an assessment across all of our volunteer programs, all of our one-day volunteer opportunities, things like that. We had about a fourth of the volunteers who had volunteered in 2021 participate, so 92 people, and 95% of them were satisfied or very satisfied. And so, you know, we have a happy crew. They're excited about being part of the library. They love the library. They like working with our staff. And overall, you know, very positive things. 93% of the communication was good, 80% of the trainings. And really they volunteer because they believe in the mission and they want to give back to our community. And so we have, you know, real advocates in our community, in our volunteers. They did have suggestions for how we can improve, but those weren't, there wasn't no consistent thread, but some of the themes were more interaction with staff, which is our theme, more interaction with volunteers, some improvements on trainings and some of the programs, and snacks. So we hadn't had snacks during COVID. They had been sitting there all that time and we haven't gotten back to snacks, but we'll get there. A volunteer helped go through all the survey data and helped me analyze it. And this was just what she said in looking through all of it, that volunteers see library staff as heroes during a trying year. Volunteering at the library has provided an oasis of sanity for these volunteers. Volunteers feel needed and useful, and kudos to the staff. And I think that's the feeling overall, is just, we have amazing staff. They are so gracious and kind with our volunteers, and our volunteers love the opportunity to work with them. And the quote at the bottom was just one of the quotes from one of the volunteers on the survey. And, you know, just said same thing, the kindness, yeah, just the patience, the thoughtfulness, and all that of our staff. Some of the favorite things of our volunteers are meeting other community members, interacting with our patrons, being able to contribute to the work we do, like in the oral history, and seeing how it makes people happy, like when they're doing the tech drop-in. It came up a number of years ago about the demographics of our volunteers. Not all the volunteers filled out the demographic section, but probably about 70% did, or 70 people out of the 42. So this is just a snapshot, you know, 80% white, 7% disability, 80% female, 79% heterosexual, and the age range is really a mix. The one, you know, that is the least is college age, which is interesting and gives us an opportunity to build on that. And with Reading Buddies, you know, we do secure college students. So we'll have more college students in our next survey. And we plan to do one again in the coming month. So you should get a survey yourself. So that, before I move on, that's kind of a snapshot of volunteer stuff. I mean, really overall, we are talking about people that, especially during COVID, were super eager to participate and help and pitch in. Now people are, but I think there's so many opportunities and kind of getting back into that, like everything's happening again. And so it's not as quick and easy to volunteer or to get volunteers. And we don't, what was I going to say on that? It's not as quick and easy to get them. And we have many more opportunities. So it's not like we have one or two, all of a sudden we have 10 or something like that. So that's kind of what's happening at this stage. So with that, I'm going to just talk really briefly about community literacy and outreach. I just started in that role in September. Just some thoughts I want to share with you and kind of where we're at with that. So for Boulder Reads, you know, kind of where we're at is really we need to rebuild the team. Karen and Christine have been driving forward, you know, providing the services that we provided before to as many people as possible, but it's really been short-staffed. With the approval of the budget, we have 2.5 people that we get to hire in this literacy area, and that's super exciting. That will be a priority in kind of building the team. That means more than half of the team will be new. And a key thing in that will be really assessing what we're doing and prioritizing and helping bring things to scale in terms of that it's doable for the staff, ambitious while doable. You know, they've been stretched for sure, and we'll bring in some more people to support them. And I'm really excited about having a team that can really work on our literacy efforts in that. And when we do that, you know, creating more awareness of the services that are available and what we offer, and making sure we're connecting with the communities that can benefit from that. I do want to mention that, I don't think I mentioned this yet, that we did hire the Reading Buddies program manager, and she was fantastic. Unfortunately, in less than 2 months, she had a health crisis and had to resign from the position. So just when starting the program, having secured all the volunteers, background checks, got all the little buddies, she had to step out. We've been able to shift gears and get some staff to help temporarily in it. But that is something now we're going to have to rehire and kind of figuring out what's doable right away in January again. So we have a fantastic group. It is so exciting. If you ever want to like warm your heart, come by on a Tuesday evening between 4:30 and 6 and see all these kids, and some are adults, but most of them are CU students working with little kids. And just last week, for example, before the session, we had 2 parents come up and say, can my child sign up again for next session? You know, they're just getting going. They're so excited. They're loving this program now, and they're asking to come back. And those happen to be 2 kids that weren't really reading much at all. And then this last session, with the support of our staff, kind of pulling age appropriate books and beginner books, those kids actually read their first book of the Reading Buddies session. And we're so proud. And we worked this week on praising the little buddies and making it a really positive experience. So it's going phenomenally. It's so fun to see. Anybody who wants to cheer up their day, come by on a Tuesday and just see that. It's just phenomenal. In terms of outreach, we haven't had an outreach staff person for about a year. We are really hoping to kind of take that time to do assessment. We put out a request for proposal earlier this year for a consultant, partially because of staff and partially because the proposals just weren't the right fit. We weren't able to move forward on either of those. We just got another proposal we're going to be assessing. But really the idea is, you know, there's so many possibilities. And when I started doing some outreach to prepare for the consultant, everybody's excited to work with the library and they're super positive about the library. There's just so many opportunities. And so I'm hoping we'll still be able to hire a consultant to help us really assess some of the literacy and outreach opportunities, especially if we look towards the Latino community and underserved communities. And I know that's been part of master plans since 2007. And that's really a priority for our outreach, is how do we make connections to underserved communities, prioritizing the Latino community and other key underserved communities in Boulder. We are able to hire a staff person in the coming year on that, and we're excited about that. And I really see this area as kind of, I see outreach as part of many people of the library, not this one person. And I see us more in a coordinating role and helping define kind of what the priorities are and helping bring staff together so that, again, it's doable and we each can take on little pieces and really make a difference in our community and bringing our library to the community and bringing the community to the library in new ways. So the immediate next steps are really hiring the volunteer services manager to fill my role. We did doing interviews this week. We hope to make a decision in the next week or two for sure. And then moving on to the literacy, we get to hire a Boulder Reads literacy manager again and a Reading Buddies program coordinator. So all of those are coming forward. And then reviewing the proposal, seeing if that's a good fit. We really would like to do some of that literacy and outreach strategic planning and kind of define more what we're trying to do more specifically in that area so that we can really focus our resources and our time. So that is volunteer services and a little bit about community literacy and outreach. Any questions? Yes, Scott.
Kate, I actually have a question about one of your pictures, and it was on the slide that said Boulder Reads 2022-23, and you had a big picture kind of in the right-hand corner. And
Okay.
it was, I don't know, were those all your volunteers? Or
Let's see.
because it relates to a larger, to me, there's a larger question that is going to accompany what I'm seeing in that picture.
So this picture is they used to have annual celebrations of the learners for Boulder Reads. And this picture is this the picture you're talking about?
Yep.
Yep. So this was one of those celebrations of our learners for Boulder Reads.
Well, my question is this. There are almost no men in this picture. And when we start talking about literacy and in terms of your volunteers, it's 80% women, 20% men roughly. And so my question becomes, where are the men? What are we doing to encourage men to volunteer at the library? How are we looking at men as being an underserved community in a lot of ways within literacy? How are we looking at all those issues? Because the research is very, very clear that boys and men don't read, and reading and soft skills is a crucial deal for men and boys as they advance and move into careers. And if I saw a picture like that and I saw nothing but women and I was a guy, I probably would not participate. I would say, I'm not welcomed. I'm not included in this. And so I think that's a good, and I know there are some challenges in trying to get men and boys to participate. But I think that's something that that really needs to be looked at.
Mm-hmm. I think that's something that we can definitely look at in the future. I mean, so far, the last few years, the area hasn't even been fully staffed, and mainly in my sense, it's responsive to who comes in the door. I think one of the things as we go forward is looking at where do we get out the word? Who do we get out the word to? How do we reach people? And one of the things we could look at is how do we reach men in particular? So far we're at a place that we haven't been able to serve really probably the full demand of what's in the community. And so it's been my sense, and I can see if I'll double check with Karen, who runs that program, is just that it's who has been the partners already, and then who comes to us. But I think that is something to look at, and the same for volunteer services. I mean, so far it's been because of the demand for volunteers and what we're managing, it's kind of who's come to us and then leveraging that. More than it is going out and targeting different populations. And hopefully we'll get to a place that we have the opportunity to do that. But in the past few years, we haven't had that capability.
My guess is that over the past, since March of 2020, it was more a matter of, we'll take any volunteers we can get. It doesn't matter who they are. Whatever we can get, we'll take them. But I think now that we're past some of that, I think you're right. We need to start looking at that in sort of an intentional and strategic way to say, which groups do we want to target, and how do we bring in members of those various groups, and moving on. instead of just saying, oh, we're so thankful for anybody we have this time, but let's see how we can figure it out.
And I think one of the priorities for us too is making sure that volunteer opportunities are accessible to anybody who would like to participate and that they're familiar with it. I mean, I would imagine if you looked at volunteerism across the board, not just the library, you're going to see more women volunteering in general, not just at our library, but really, like, how do we make it accessible to people from other cultures? How do we make it accessible to people with disabilities? What opportunities do we have? And so I think if we look at different ways that different people and backgrounds and cultures, there's lots of things we might be able to do with that. Any other questions?
Thanks for being here, Kate. It was an excellent presentation. So good to see everything that you're doing. I have to say that I often see volunteers when I'm in the library, especially when it comes to the things like Summer of Discovery. And I love seeing those teen volunteers getting involved. I think that's so great that you've made it accessible to younger people to get involved. And I think that's really important. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
So lovely
thank you.
to see Meeting Buddies back. Thanks for doing that.
Thanks for the opportunity to share that, and we'll see you later.
Thanks, Kate.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so moving on to item number 8. This is the library policy review, bringing back policies that we've seen for the last, I think, 2 meetings, or maybe the last meeting. The first one would be attachment A, and it is the changes to the library rules of conduct. Thank you for putting the changes really clearly in yellow and summarizing the changes. Jennifer, I don't know if you wanted to say some pieces about this before there's any discussion or anything?
Well, no, we took the rules changes that the staff proposed to you all and that you approved last meeting and had the attorneys review them. Our attorney also worked with a group of prosecutors to review these to make sure that they're all enforceable. And so the changes that they made are, like you said, summarized for you. And this is your opportunity to ask questions about those changes and if you have any others to offer. If you don't, you can approve them tonight and they'll move to the next stage, which is we'll have them translated and posted for public comment for 2 weeks. If there are no public comments, they go to the city manager for approval and then to you all for approval. If there are public comments, then we consider those and they may add another step in the process.
So does anybody have any questions or feedback on the changes? And as I said, they're highlighted in yellow and I believe summarized as well in the first part. Go ahead, Scott.
I thought that the changes were real clear, made a lot of sense to me. And so I'm good with those.
Any other comments or feedback? I agree with what Scott said. The change is clear. I'm eager to move this along so that you guys can get this in place so that it is something that you have in your toolkit going forward. So if there's no other questions or changes, I say that we move to vote to approve these changes and move them on to the next stage. Would anyone like to second that? Okay, we'll take Sylvia. I think I saw her hand up first. All those in favor? Stephen? Yep. Okay. Approved. Thank you. Okay, and then moving on to the next item, which is item number 9, another policy review. These are the changes and input to the policy that we started on last week about the Carnegie Library for Local History policies. And I'm just moving down. Let me just find that. Is that also attachment A? Okay.
I'm not sure why they're all labeled attachment A, so strange. It's actually page 23 in your packet.
That's it.
It's a memo.
Okay.
And so the piece that you all need to review tonight is just the change that was recommended to the archive collection policy. So I took all of your feedback back to the team, and we went through it together. They really liked the suggestion to change how to contribute to how to participate, and some of the other moving some of the other information around to kind of highlight what the Maria Rogers Oral History Program has to offer volunteers, that sort of thing. So they agreed that all of those changes were great. They discussed the suggestions. There were a couple suggestions for, there was a, I guess to back up, there was a question about a reference to the Museum of Boulder in the archive collection policy. And some of the commissioners had said that was somewhat ambiguous or didn't make sense, didn't go with the policy. And there were a couple of suggestions made. I posed those both to the team, and they decided that yes, it is unclear, and it probably doesn't really belong in the policy. So they proposed removing it wholesale. And the reasons why they did that is they feel like the information that preceded that section, a sentence, really in a positive way presents what the archive will collect, and it doesn't prevent them from making a different decision if somebody offered them an object that they felt was appropriate to accept into the collection. They also felt like we covered recommending where people could donate objects. In the how to participate section, there's information about how you can donate materials to the library or to the archive, and that if they have something that's like a painting or personal effect, that they consider offering it to the Museum of Boulder. And then they also had a nice example of how we work with the Museum of Boulder. We work together to make sure that donations of any kind really find the right place. It's not always with the archive. Sometimes, like in the example, there was both a tea set and some paper materials donated, offered to both the museum and the archive, and the staff from both got together and decided that the museum would take the tea set and we would take the guest book and the personal papers. And you know, we collaborate with the museum on exhibits. So if they ever wanted to exhibit that tea set and they wanted the copies or the original guest book to put on display, we would certainly consider loaning it to them, and we do that often. The other thing that they pointed out was that sometimes they get offered things of historical value, but they just don't belong in our archive, primarily because we just don't have a whole lot of space to have things outside of Boulder County. And so they work with their colleagues at other historic institutions like archives and museums. The Denver Western History Library is one that I know that they had some materials offered to them, and they decided that they'd be better if they were sent to the Denver Western History Museum. So they make sure that things of historic value find a home and find a place where people can access them.
Thank you, and for the background on that, and for indulging the commission in that process. I think that the changes make it clear, and if there, please let me know if anyone has any questions or comments or changes they'd like to see. Okay, then I propose that we move to we vote on approving the changes to the Carnegie Library for Local History policies. Do we have a second? Stephen, thank you. All those in favor? Okay, thank you so much, Jennifer. Okay, so then we've got item number 10, and that is the Library Commission application questions. So as we know, everyone knows, we will be getting a new, well, we hope to get a new library commissioner in next April. And so at this time of year, we put the application materials together, and I believe they typically open applications sometime in January. And that is the process for interviewing people for the open position. So it's going to be an interesting time to recruit a commissioner. We'll find out next Tuesday, hopefully, what that new commissioner's role exactly will be, how long that commissioner's role will be. But any way that this goes, it is going to be an important time. So we want to make sure that we have the best questions out there to recruit a new commissioner. So we've got attachment A, page 27, is the list of existing questions. Now, if I remember rightly, we look at these every year. We don't necessarily want to expand the number of questions because we don't want it to be too, we don't want to not encourage people to apply. So I think it's a good number of questions. Initially, when I looked through these, to me, it looks like question number 5 and question number 10 is essentially the same question. So question number 5 is, have you participated in other community organizations? Please describe how your involvement in the community has led you to applying for the Library Commission. And then question 10 is, please describe your involvement in other organizations. How has your past involvement led you to applying for the Library Commission? So I think my first thought is that we take one of those questions out, and probably question number 10. So that was my feedback. I suppose the other thing I was wondering about is, do we put something in there about the library district? Again, this is kind of a tricky time to ask this question, because as of next Tuesday, we'd know whether that's a really important piece to put in there or not. And I don't know, how long does this have to be moved forward in November, or could we wait to our December meeting? Do we know?
It's due December 5th.
Oh, and let's look at the date of our December meeting. So December 7th is our next commission meeting. I wonder, do you think that the city would let us have 2 extra days on that? Or do you think that's a hard deadline?
Yeah, I could reach out to the clerks and see if we could be granted that.
Yeah, because I feel like it would really change next month whether we ask that question or not. Scott, you had your hand up. Do you want to? Is there?
Yeah, no, I think if we can give those couple extra days, because I'm looking at those questions, and I'm thinking we almost need to redraft almost all new questions. For example, in question 8, it says, how do you participate in it as an advisory capacity? If the district goes through, the trustees commission become more of a governance body.
Well, to be clear, these people would be still applying for the commission. The trustees would be a separate group.
Okay.
So maybe if we could possibly get an extension, I wonder if we could think about this, is over this next month, knowing that if we were to get an extension of 2 days, that the changes we want to make to these questions, we would need to do quickly, maybe even in real time in our meeting, if we have the time to put that aside, because if we were to ask for 2 extra days, we'd want something to them the morning of probably the 8th. So maybe as a commission, could we consider these questions individually next Wednesday or Thursday, depending on how celebrations or commiserations go for what happens next Tuesday, so that we could come as a working group in December with those questions, with questions in mind of what we would change considering the outcome of next Tuesday. Does that seem like a good idea? And I suppose the backup would be is if we were to ask the city for those 2 extra days and then they do not allow us to have those days and said that the deadline would be December 5th, I think that's what you said, then we could work it by email in the meantime to get that, to make that and that first deadline if we were not granted extra time. Does that seem like a good plan? Okay. All right, well, let's move forward with that working plan then. Thanks, everyone. Okay, so then we'll move on to item number 11, which is our director's report.
All right. Most of the update is around the adjustment to base, which, as you can see, this is something for Sylvia since you're relatively new. We do adjustment to base twice a year. It's mostly to reconcile the books. You can see in this case, it's for accepting on the approval of grant expenditures, grant revenues to accept them into the budget. And the second big one, which is the largest one, is the roughly $2 million that we had needed to draw down in order to meet the contract for the Novo Library. So we are in the contract, we have a building permit. We're pretty much ready to go, but we required expending or allocating these funds and getting council to approve the expenditure of those monies so we could enter into that final contract. The rest of it's pretty straightforward. The closure schedule for 2023 is something that we bring to you each year. You guys need to take a look at it. I believe the 2023 closure, it does include Juneteenth, right? I think that's the big difference from previous years is Juneteenth is now a national holiday. So that'll be a day where the library is closed. And then at your request, Jennifer updated the current and estimated costs for library services based on the 2023 budget, which has now been approved by council. And so you can see that there in front of you. You know, I feel because there's been so much talk about it, I feel compelled to be very clear with you, right? So beginning in 2023, the budget itself will be the 11.06 plus the 3.6 million, which is the cost for everything from IT and facilities to communications to lawyers to everything else like that. And then the capital maintenance budget is an average. That's an average annual expenditure over the course of about 10 years. We don't have $1 million set aside in 2023, but that's the average annual amount. So $15.67 million would be the budget. The other two items, the operating deficit due to cuts that we made, which still exist, and we haven't fully restored funding back to pre-pandemic levels, and the capital maintenance for deferred maintenance, neither one of those have funding. So I mean, you may say that is the cost of running the library. That's what it costs to run the library well, or something like that. That's not a dollar amount that we've ever had in the bank. That's never a dollar amount. That the 15.67 is what it costs to run, what it currently costs the taxpayer to run the library. The 17.57, that may very well be the cost of running the library. That's what it would take us to do if we were to actually be restored to the pre-pandemic staffing levels, as well as to have funding for addressing the facilities backlog, which we never have had. The city's never granted that money at this point. They have not identified a revenue source. Is that clear? So it's just, I know it's a little bit like slicing turnips at this point, but I feel compelled to be very specific about it because there's so much talk about those numbers. So, and that's pretty much the end of my report. Do you guys have any questions? Yes, Scott.
I have one question, and it may be an easy one to answer. When looking at the, it's not with the budget, but with the library closures for the dates.
Yes,
At the end of December, it's the library is closed on, I want to make sure I have the correct dates when I'm looking at the information. It says Friday, December 29th, and then again, Sunday, December 31st. So I want to understand, why not just close on the 30th and 31st, or is it because the first and then maybe the second are also closing dates because of New Year's? Is that,
Scott, you sound like one of my staff members. It makes such good sense, right?
Mhm.
To do it as you described. The reason why we do that is because the majority of city staff work Monday through Friday. And so the actual holiday for city staff is usually on a Friday or a Monday. And so we honor that as well. So we will actually close on a Friday, open on a Saturday, close on a Sunday. Yeah,
and then be closed again on Monday, the 1st.
that's correct.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I suspected there was something to do with it, but I thought, well, I'll ask.
it doesn't make sense, Scott, but I appreciate you saying it does. That's
Sorry, I have a follow-up question there. So are you saying the difference between weekend staff and people that work in the day, in the weekend and weekday staff, that is? So it's to give each, so as you say, you move the holiday over to a weekday if it falls on a weekend, and then and then close the actual day of the holiday?
The city moves a holiday date to the weekday, right? So for a holiday, we would be closed then on, when it falls on a weekend, we close on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day as well.
Okay, yeah, all right, sorry,
Okay.
I just needed that
Yeah.
described one more time. I have a question. I don't know whether it's just me, and I should have probably brought this up in a pre-meeting, but I can't get into the performance reports. I don't know if anybody else could. Keeps redirecting me with the link. And so I don't know whether it's does anyone else have any problems with that?
I'm checking it now.
One of them was a broken link, I think.
Oh, Jane, I'm sorry. It looks to me, yeah, it's the redirect takes you to the master plan.
Yeah.
My apologies, that was my error.
That's okay. Would you mind, could we just repost them in next month's meeting packet so it is available
Yeah.
for anyone? Or maybe can we go back and correct it before the packet is posted so that is available online?
Yep, I can do that.
Okay, and then I wonder, is there anything out of the ordinary in any of those reports that we'd need to discuss in this meeting?
No, nothing particular. You know, our numbers are still down. I don't know when they're going to come back fully. But yeah, you can see in both the attendance and in circulation, with the exception again of the circulation of ebooks, our numbers are dropped during the pandemic and only gradually coming back. So I know a number of area libraries are reporting that their numbers are back to normal levels or close to. I haven't actually seen the data, but that's what some other libraries are reporting. I will tell you that's not the case for us.
Do you think there's anything to do with the days that are closed? We have decreased hours in some location. Could it be to do with that, or is that too simplistic?
It's possible, Jane. I don't know. You know, before. Well, I don't know. That would be interesting to test whether there's a correlation. I mean, the number of hours that we reduced during the pandemic, obviously, we were significantly ratcheted down with Reynolds and Nobo both being closed. But for the year 2023, they've both reopened, admittedly with reduced hours, but it's not a profound reduction. I mean, we are now, I think 55 or 56 hours per week at Maine, where it used to be 63. Reynolds is obviously still closed today. But I didn't bother to, that's a great question. I mean, I'll look at it to see if the percent reduction matches the percent that we haven't come back. It would be curious to me that, because typically there's not been a direct correlation between the hours that were open and the items that go out or the visitors, because they tend to come no matter what the hours are, if they're coming. No, I mean, just anecdotally, walking around the library, it still seems, at least to me, that our numbers for children are gradually ramping back up. So that number was one that was down dramatically through the beginning parts of the year, and really didn't begin to pick up until this summer. They've kind of dropped again during the school year, which is expected. But the group that really hasn't returned in quite the numbers that were here before is the senior population. So, and I'm not sure if that is a concern about the pandemic or other concerns that they may have, but that's the number that, when you look around the library, it's noticeable to me that that group is not back in the manner in which it was, because they were, after children and families and, the college age crowd, that was the biggest demographic in the library, and it doesn't appear to be the case now.
That's interesting. Wonder whether people developed new routines and new ways of doing things and haven't gone back.
Yeah, I don't know, and I haven't read a lot about it either. I haven't seen a lot of reporting on the activity of the 60+ crowd, of whether or not they're going out in the manner in which they did prior to the pandemic yet or not. That's my suspicion, is that they are finding that it's just not as, they don't feel as safe, or it's convenient or worth their time or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Jane, I just wanted to double check what page you were getting, because I just checked the links and it looks like it is the page that has the performance measures. They're a little bit further down the page. It's the annual, or the library master plan is at the top. And then if you just scroll down, like it's maybe halfway down the page, there's the list of performance measures. So.
Oh, yeah.
Where you missed that.
Yep. That was me then. Sorry.
No,
It came up to master plan, and
yeah,
yeah.
but that's
okay.
understandable.
I apologize, everyone. Okay, does anybody have any other questions for David or anything else to discuss in the report? Thank you for adding in the Reading Buddies update. It's great to see that program up again. Okay, so let's move on to item number 12. Updates from commissioners representing commission in other areas. Do we have a Boulder Library Foundation update? Oh, Stephen,
There's only basically two things. They have their big event on the 17th. And the other big thing is that they approved their strategic plan. And they're getting ready to start to move into some of the implementation phases. So probably Chris and Juliet and the consultant, we're going to be working on that piece of it for the next few months. And then I think they'll probably bring that back to the foundation board and say, here's some of the implementation pieces.
Okay. Is that strategic plan going to be published or shared anywhere?
That's a good question. I think they will be willing to share it, but I think they want to make sure that they've got it more or less nailed down. And as an aside to that, Jane, I broached this with Chris, and I haven't said this yet to David, but I think I should tell him now. But I've suggested, and we wrote on at the strategic planning retreat. One of the comments that I read was they said, "Joe, geez, we don't seem like we have enough information from the Library Commission." I'm like, well, you always put the Library Commission at the end of the meeting, and so our reports don't always get through because it takes too long. But I suggested that it would be a good idea for the foundation and the commission to meet at least once, if not twice every year, especially in these first few years going forward. Depending on what happens with the district, I think that would be a positive thing to work through some things, especially kind of in this I say in the environment we're going to be in for the next, say, 12 to 36 months.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Okay, and then thank you for that. And then update on emails and phone calls to the commission. I don't believe we've had any this month. So the only other update we have is that next month we'll be meeting hybrid. And then in January, I'll be meeting in person as a commission. So that's definitely exciting.
So do we know how many of you intend to come in person and how many intend to log in virtually?
I intend to come in person.
And
I'll
Stephen?
have to look at the date, but if I can, I'll come and I'll join in person.
I have to attend virtually because I'll be in Las Vegas. So,
Okay.
yeah.
At the roulette table?
No, I'll be up in my room. I promise. I'll be there. I'll be. It'll be the last day of a conference that I'm attending, and now it seems I'm doing a number of presentations, so I might be a little tired, but I'll be there.
Celia has reserved us a room in the Brenton building, and we'll send you some information about parking and location.
And then, and I'm sure you'll send this in the update, back in the olden days when we used to meet, we were fed. Is it in the budget? Is there a plan to feed commissioners, or will it be starting at 6?
Chicken salad. I'm making chicken salad. Celia's bringing the bread.
I think we can figure out how to feed you guys.
There you go. That was the real reason why some of us became commissioners.
Are there any requests besides chicken salad?
I don't know. I remember back in the day it just being all good all the time. So
Yeah.
you have to pull out your notes and see which catering companies made it. So
There are several good places up near the Brenton building. We'll see if one of those will work.
okay.
David, here's a suggestion on that. When will when will the vendor who's going to take over the cafe area in the library, when will they start?
Yeah, great question. We got a delivery of equipment on Monday, and I think Jennifer is going to be there tomorrow to do an espresso machine is coming in. We're hoping for mid-November, but I don't know. I don't know.
There's a
should-
long lead time on the dishwasher, and I hear from the cafe owner that the health department requires that you have all your equipment installed and you have your inspection as if you're ready to start the next day. So she's going to see if she can get a temporary used one that we can have installed before the new one arrives. And if that doesn't work out, if they'll accept them just using disposable
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah.
stuff for the patrons, and then hand wash any of the, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what they'll use, spatulas.
We'll check with her, Scott, because she's a very ambitious.
Well, no,
Person.
what prompted that question is that I'm thinking if they're new and if none of us have been there, that maybe they could be
Yeah,
the food choice for one of these upcoming meetings whenever they've got their okay to be open, and as long as the timing works.
I love that idea. Yeah, I can't wait.
That's very exciting. Okay, well, look at that, 7:30. Makes up for all those long meetings we go, right? Yay. I will close if we have no more comments or anything like that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you want to discuss retreat dates tonight?
I feel like maybe we should wait and see next month. I feel like we might know far
Okay.
more about what the future looks like, and that might be an appropriate time to discuss once we know what we're in for in the next year, if that works for everybody else. Okay, so the only thing to be thinking about, of course, is next Tuesday, but let's also keep those questions in mind for potential new commissioners so that we can come back next month and take care of that in the meeting so we can move that forward. But I'm going to close the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Right.
And we'll see you all soon.